Hi and welcome. Today we're going to look at a fantastic game by the great Polish master Akiba Rubinstein. Now Rubinstein is by many considered one of the greatest players not to have become a world champion. And if you look at some great players of today, you will find that many will name Rubinstein as their favorite player. He was a fantastic all-around player, very good in simple positions. He has a model game against hanging pawns. He was very good in endgames, especially rook endgames, and he has a very famous, one of the best combinations ever in Rubinstein, which we might have a look at later. But for now, we're going to have a look at a game, which is a King's Gambit. It's a fun game. Let's have a look. So let's have a look at the game itself. Akiba Rubinstein has the white pieces and Hromadka the black pieces. Rubinstein opens up with pawn to e4, e5. Rubinstein played a lot of d4, but when he opened e4, he sometimes went for the King's Gambit. The romantic, popular opening that people still like today, but has somewhat of a dubious reputation, which I don't think is really justified. I think it's a good opening on many levels to play. Hromadka played bishop to c5. White went knight f3, d6, and knight c3. Now, we turn the pawn green to see analysis. This can also arise via the Vienna game, which is e4, e5, and knight to c3 here. Bishop c5, and there f4 is an option. And after d6, knight to f3, we have the same position as in the game. So we can go back to the game. So after knight c3 by white in the game, let's have it correct here, knight c3, this was the last move. Hromadka played knight to f6, bishop c4, development, knight c6 and d3. One problem for white is that the bishop on c5 is covering the g1 square, so we can't really castle. So to solve the problem of the king, we either need to castle queenside, and for that to happen we would need to get the bishop out, get the queen out. The second option is to get the queen out first and then put the bishop on e3, and then castle kingside, excuse me. And the third option is not to castle, so we'll see which option Rubinstein went with. Bishop to g4, white plays h3, and black took an f3, otherwise playing bishop g4 doesn't make much sense. Queen takes f3, and knight d4, and this is the point of black's play, to play bishop to g4. We have an attack on the queen and attack on c2. So how does white deal with it? He plays queen to g3. Now I think it's time to bring up the analysis board, because black didn't take on c2, which looks like the most natural move. We can take a pawn. Let's get the correct move. We can take a pawn here with check, and we pick up the rook. What more can we ask for in one move? Well, things are not that easy. White will play king d1, attack the knight. He will capture the rook, and now queen takes g7. We're threatening the rook and the mate on f7. So rook f8 is forced. Now f takes e5. Attack on the knight, so again forced move. Bishop g5. Something like this is what white could play. Pinning the knight. Black has to retreat, and now rook f1. And we're going to win a piece back here. And note that the knight in the corner is more or less going to lose its existence in this game. And even a plan like walking the king to take the knight is going to be sufficient. So white is probably slightly better here. It's still a complicated position, and black can still play like this. But Rubinstein's opponent decided not to, and played queen to e7. We saw f takes e5 from Rubinstein. Pawn takes on e5. Note that if we take now on g7, there's simply rook g8. Nothing to worry for black, and then he will castle on the queen side. But now we have to worry about this one, how to protect. And Rubinstein finds a nice dynamic solution. He plays king d1. Now generally we're taught that we should castle and not keep the king in the center, but there are exceptions, and the great players and the great programs like AlphaZero with his king e3 maneuver, which surely you've seen by now. But king d1, it's not so easy to get to the king, and white does have the bishop here and a very strong pawn presence in the center, so black can't really break through to get to the king. Let's see what happened. Hromadka played c6. This has the very clear idea of playing b5, attacking the bishop, and therefore white plays a4, preventing this b5 move and sustaining the bishop on a strong diagonal. Rook g8, rook to f1. Now white might have ideas of playing his bishop to g5 and taking, and then there would be a pin, and the rook would hang at the end. So black plays h6. Note that we can't take on h6 because the rook is defended by the knight now, not any other line. And now knight e2, and this is a strong positional move. White wants to exchange these knights, and that's exactly what happened in the game, and I'll show you the idea. Knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, and c3. The bishop is attacked. He moves back. Now before executing the idea, we gain more space, we attack the bishop, and since the bishop has been pushed back, we actually get a nice diagonal for our own bishop, attacking this, which black must spend time on to defend. And now king c2. Now the king is completely safe. A configuration like this is usually very safe for the king, with the pawns like this. And that's because we have this very strong light squared bishop, and black doesn't have an opposing light squared bishop. So black has, actually white has very strong position here because of the bishop pair. King a8 was played. Rook f3. And black didn't go down without a fight here. He played knight to d5. To which white answered bishop g1. A natural question is what happens if e takes on d5. So let's have a look at that. If e takes d5, there is e4 with an attack on the queen and an attack on the rook. We can save the rook with rook f4, but after taking here, black will take on f4 next, and he's well alive and kicking and in the game. So we don't want to allow him to do that. So we'll go back to the game. Bishop to g1 was the move played here by Rubinstein. The knight jumped into f4, and now queen f2 with a somewhat subtle threat. Can you see what white is threatening? Yeah, she's threatening mate, so bishop e8 to prevent the mate. g3 kicking the knight, and the knight actually took on h3. Now if we move the queen, say here, then black will play knight g5 or take on g1, and everything is covered. And he's actually won a pawn, so white must do something else. What does he do? If you said rook takes f7, you're absolutely correct. And now, if we take on f2, which wasn't played in the game, then rook takes e7, with a double attack on the bishop, on the rook and the knight. The only way to defend is rook g to f8. But black will run into difficulties quite soon here. We'll attack the knight. We'll play a6, threatening mate actually. A takes b7. b6 or b5, doesn't really matter. We're going to take on f8. And then the pawns are going to start dropping. We can take on g7. You can see the idea there of putting the bishop on e6, d7 and c6. And this king is going to feel quite uneasy here on a8. So let's go back. So we saw queen d6 by black instead. And now we see sort of the star move of the game. The queen is attacked. If we move it and black takes our bishop on g1, we might have difficulties converting this, since we are going to have opposite color bishops. But white has a very strong move here. Can you see it? White played the excellent looking queen to b6. Very strong move. Now, threatening mate on b7. But the more stressing matter is that our queen is hanging. So what happens if black takes the queen? Have you calculated this? A takes b6. We take a takes b6 check. The only move is bishop a7, interposing the check. Rook takes a7, king b8. Rook on f takes b7 check. King c8. Now we can keep giving checks, but that's only a draw. But an absolutely and very important pattern to know here when you have the rooks on the 7th. If you can protect one of the rooks, which is closer to the king, you're going to threaten mate. And the winning move here is bishop a6. We're simply threatening rook a8 mate, and there is no defense here. Black has to give up his queen on d3, but we will simply take, and then the bishop will return to a6. Return to sender. So no soup for you. So queen b6. So a takes b6 is a forced loss, so Hromadka tried rook d7, covering b7, but now bishop c5. And things are starting to fall apart here for black. He took on f7, but now white took the queen, bishop takes d6. And the problem for black is that he can't take back here on b6 because of the mate. Now we have a bishop covering the b8 square, so you have to do something else. And he tried rook f2 check. But here Rubinstein found he can move his king, but I like the move he played better. Queen takes f2, knight takes f2, and bishop c5. Double attack on the rook and the knight, and white is going to win a piece here. And I think this is a worthy final position with the dominating bishop pair controlling the board completely. And a very nice game by the Polish great Akiba Rubinstein. And I hope you enjoyed this one, guys. Bye bye.